Beardmore Lounge and make their way in. We'll get started very shortly. I do want to have a few housekeeping notes as well. We do have a large contingent of people who are online. We are recording this session as well, so that the people that haven't had a chance to see this presentation in person or online will have a chance to review it. Any questions or comments that you have, we do have a question and answer period that we will be moderating. We are looking for questions directed at one of the panel members, and we've got some fantastic professionals on this team. So from a welcome and introductions, Scott Heron, our amazing superintendent, I'll tell you how important tonight is. Tampa is playing Toronto. Scott is supposed to be there. He's president of time. He's here with us tonight. For those who don't know, Scott has personally directed over 90 plus green renovations at numerous courses. If you want to talk more about getting into the nitty gritty of what it takes to keep a green alive, he'd be more than happy to talk to you at some point. We went on an amazing tour, really opened up the golf committee's eyes about what it takes for our course to play. Thank you very much, Scott. Jeff Long, our director of golf and head pro. If there was anybody that understands the golf experience at the Toronto Hunt and the membership and has been a really good guiding force on our committee, Jeff has been fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Sean De Silva. Sean, I know he's leaving. We all know that. Besides that point, that's not what the master plan is about. It is about us planning for the future. And Sean has done an incredible job with the 30-year, sorry, I lost the name of it, 30-year capital plan, thank you, about where our money needs to be spent to keep the quality of the experience of the golf, of the clubhouse, concern with the bluffs. This is all stuff that is being baked in, and Sean has created a phenomenal template to guide us through that period. And this master plan is a part of that period. So thank you very much, Sean. And Christine Fraser, our golf course architect, who has just returned and about to head back on Saturday to work on a spectacular new course in Aberdeen, right on the coast. Opens in 2026. Christine, as some of you know, has worked on courses in Europe, Scotland, England, Ireland, right here in Toronto, other parts of Canada. Christine, thank you very much for your patience, for listening to our membership, taking their thoughts and ideas, and really trying to bake this into a master plan that plays well for every single golfer of this club, not just a few. So, with that said, I'm going to turn the mic over to Christine. Just to go through the agenda, Christine is going to run through the revised master plan based on all the feedback that we've had since first presented in May. Also with the 7 and 8 survey that we did, which was really helpful for us to understand tolerance, thoughtful suggestions that came in the comments, and to really help drive what we feel is a strong master plan to move our golf forward for the next 25 years. We then have bill of quantities, drop budget, execution plan options. Sean will lead that discussion. Obviously, those were questions that everybody's been asking over the past little while, but we had to come to a final decision on the plan in order to understand and determine what those are. Our next steps, and then obviously a Q&A answer period so that we're willing to pass the mic around. We may have some questions for the folks that are online. We'll integrate those. And we look forward to hearing everything that you have to say. And thank you very much for coming out tonight. This is important to all of us. And I really appreciate that everybody has the passion for golf in the Toronto Hunt. So thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. I remember it was July 2022 getting a call from Sean that I'll never forget, saying we would like to hire you as our architect at the Toronto Hunt Club. And one of the best days in my professional career. It was really meaningful to me. And so since that day, July last year, this master plan has not left my mind, and we've been working on it, and it's taken a lot of drafts to get here where we are today. I'd like to thank the committee. I see a few of you in the room today. You have put in hundreds of hours of work on this plan as much as me. So I have to stay in front of the camera here. So thanks to the committee. This has been such a collaborative process. And part of how we've got to where we are now. Who's got the slide? I have the slide. Can you maybe do that for me? Next slide. So going into this master plan, there was a lot of data that was collected to determine, you know, kind of the character of the club and the opportunities that presented itself and what was missing at this golf course. And that entailed a lot of quantitative and qualitative data collection, a lot of listening to the members, speaking with the membership, going out and playing in the ladies leagues and walking around in men's night and just seeing how golfers interact with the golf course. And that was really informative for me in terms of how you use the property and sort of try to fill in those gaps of where we found that the golf course could be improved. And the other portion of that is really taking a lot of measurements, doing a lot of data collection with Jeff in terms of what tees are played the most, how many rounds do you get each year to determine, are the tees big enough, are the greens big enough, are we meeting the needs to be able to maintain this place efficiently. So all of that is kind of compiled into the first draft. We presented that first draft to our master plan committee in October 2022. So first draft was over a year ago at this point. We've kind of tweaking it ever since. We also presented it to the men's and women's handicap committee and the board. And during all of those presentations, we were receiving feedback and kind of disseminating that into the next draft. So draft 2 was presented to these committees, had the feedback come back, and then we did a draft 3. And then you would have seen a survey that had gone out about the 7th and 8th holes recently. There were kind of contentious points of the plan that we kind of were stuck at a little bit. So we wanted to hear from you, and this whole process has been really collaborative, and I've found that the most rewarding part of this journey has been just being able to listen to you, because this is your club, and you certainly know the course better than I do. So your input has always been valuable, and I hope that you will feel that reflected in this 4th draft. So I'm really proud of this draft. We've all been working very hard on it. I feel like it's there. I feel we're there now. So there's not too much of a change between the 3rd and the 4th drafts, but I will just refresh the draft with you, and we'll go hole by hole and talk about sort of the high level macro sort of opportunities and constraints on each particular hole. Okay. Go for it. So when I think after all of this feedback was given, we kind of landed on 4 kind of pillars of the design that we wanted to address. The first is addressing end-of-life infrastructure. And the first day I stepped on the property, it was because the bunkers were failing. So that from the very day one has always been part of this plan. That was the impetus of doing this master plan, is our bunkers are failing. And just like your house requires maintenance, upkeep, new roof, so does a golf course. Every element on a golf course has a lifespan. Drainage pipes have a lifespan, greens have a lifespan. And so a lot of this master plan is addressing those infrastructure efficiencies and how to go forward and make sure that you have a golf course that's playable, consistent, and maintainable for the next 50 years. The second pillar was to provide a more equitable playing field. And a lot of the feedback I heard was it plays too easy for the high swing speeds and a little bit too challenging for the lower swing speeds. And so it's trying to find that balance in this plan has been a big part of a lot of the changes to the golf course. The third is we want to retain the challenge. We all like playing this golf course because it's tricky. And nothing about this plan is intended to make it easier. We want it to make it more equitable and more playable, but easier is not part of this conversation. And we also, because you're a 9-hole golf course, it's really important to be able to have variety when you come out here so that there's a different golf course every time you come out. Something's a little bit changed, and whether that's length or angle or lie or type of recovery shot, variety is something that's really important in golf architecture. And then finally, long-term course sustainability and efficiency. And that's kind of where Scott's role comes in. How can we set him up well to make sure the golf course is maintainable and in exceptional conditioning that we've come to love and expect? Hole number 1. Okay, so this is a great starting hole. There's not a lot of change here. A few of the elements that I was concerned about was the safety between the practice area and the first hole. So we've really tried to address that with some tree planting, a little bit of contouring in between those holes to create some separation along the left.
So.
Yeah, so right in that area along the left of the hole, we're just going to try to bolster that with a little bit more of a safety margin so that people in the practice area will feel safe when they're over there. The second part of this hole is it's quite difficult to maintain for Scott from Scott's perspective. There's not a lot of teeing space, and it just you're not able to spread wear in an efficient way. So we're going to expand the teeing area, widen the fairway a little bit, and also reduce the sand footprint. So when we're reducing the sand footprint, our aim is to keep the same challenge, keep the same visual, but you can do that with half of the sand footprint. Yeah, so it was my recommendation to remove the tree in the middle of the fairway on the first hole. There's a lot of pushback, so that tree shall stay. But I will recommend when the day comes that it falls, don't plant another one. So yeah, you get your tree while it lives. Another element of this hole was that talking about that equity balance is the people who can hit their drive over the trees, they have a big bailout area to the left. There's not a ton of penalty to go 40 yards left. And because Scott is so good at his job, the rough is, you know, perfect over there. So they have a wonderful lie. It's a nice little easy chip shot, 40 yards, easy hole for the good players. And because of the way the fairway is formed, the green entrance and the tree in the middle of the fairway, it's also quite a tricky hole for people who can't drive it over the trees. So it's finding that balance. We're going to make it a little bit harder for people who go 40 yards left of the green to get to the green. There's going to be a little bit of penalty involved in doing that. So there'll be some contouring. The bunker formation will address that, and some tree planting. Yeah, I think we can move on.
Questions now or?
We'll do it at the questions at the end. Yeah.
And did you
Keep it in mind.
want the?
Yeah, so practice green, I think the practice green can be improved, just by creating something that's a little bit more reflective of what is actually on the golf course. And creating a practice green with more flat ground, because the purpose of a practice green is to gauge the speed of the golf course before you go out and play, and when you have something that is so contoured, it's very difficult to do that. So we'll just flatten it out a little bit, so that it's actually more functional as a practice green for you. And tie that all into the first tees to create kind of a grand, and sort of imposing first tee. So there's a lot of common themes that you'll see throughout this, if you go back to those 4 pillars of, trying to create an equitable playing field, address failing infrastructure, make Scott's job a little bit more efficient, and create variety and fun while retaining the challenge. It's all in these goals. So the safety margins, again, on this hole with the housing on the corner, we're going to plant a little bit more trees. We're going to change the alignment of the tee. That tee on the second hole is quite elevated. And so one architectural trick, if you want to increase the boundary of the safety boundary, is to lower those tees. So if you lower the tees by 2 meters, all of a sudden the trees become 2 meters higher. So that's the idea on these tees. The bunker on the left comes back a little bit. That becomes more of an aiming bunker. I don't want to get too much into like the nitty because I'm going to take up way too much time. But if you have specific questions on elements, please ask me. But I'll just kind of rip through this. The bunker on the inside of the dog leg is something that we refer to as a double hazard. So if the bunker wasn't there, would you still be penalized if your ball landed there? And in this case, you certainly would be, because you're in amongst the trees and you wouldn't have a direct shot at the green. So the bunker doesn't necessarily have to be there. You will be penalized if you land there anyway. So we'll retain some of that contouring of the bunker. We don't like flat ground in golf architecture. So anytime we can put in some movements and contouring, change the horizon lines, we like to do that. So you'll see a lot of these contour lines on the plan, and that just means the ground will move with the natural formations of the land. Okay, third hole. Yeah, I 4-putted the screen. I'm not that bad at all. So there's some issues with this green. This would be a great opportunity example of a good opportunity to change the green, because this hole could be much improved by some slight rearrangement of contouring on the green. And if we're going to get in there and change the green, there's also opportunity to shift it left away from the boundary, just to create a larger margin between the houses. So this hole is a pretty big reformation of the elements of the hole. So 2 new bunkers, a new green, and a new green location. And what that hopefully will do is increase the margin between the houses and the green, and also create a more playable putting surface. So the USGA, a little fun fact here. The USGA recommends that a 9-hole golf course have 16 acres of fairway. And what that does is allow the traffic to spread where it allows a well-hit shot to reach the fairway and green. And it allows a playable golf course. And you have 7.8 acres of fairway. So there's a lot of scope out here to enlarge the scale, expand the fairway where we can. And if the fourth hole is a good example of opportunity to do that. And because we're retaining a lot of, all of the trees along these holes, it's not going to get any easier. because even though the fairway's wider, you're still gonna have those trees lining the holes. This one, the fourth hole remains largely unchanged. There's a slight reduction in sand footprint. Again, retaining the same strategy of the hole, the same architectural bones are there, but we're reducing the sand footprint. Bunkers are the most expensive things to build and maintain long-term on a golf course. They require the most intervention most frequently. So any opportunity we get to reduce the sand footprint while maintaining the architectural integrity, we've done that in this plan. The fourth green is the smallest green on the property, and for a very long par four, there's opportunity there to enlarge it. Greens tend to shrink over time because it's just a natural process that happens to a lot of old golf clubs, where every time someone is out there cutting the edge of the green, they tend to err on the inside, because otherwise you scalp the green, it's very evident, and Scott yells at you. So it's just a natural process of old greens as they get smaller. So this is a great opportunity to push the green back out to where it probably was. You'll get a couple really interesting new pin positions. The bunkers are going to come into play a little bit more. You'll have more pinnable opportunities, spread the wear, better conditionings of the green if we can push it out. This green is, I think it's 4,200 square feet. We're looking for something around 5,500 on average. Yeah, if you see red on these plans, there's a change in the yardage. So we're hoping to get a little bit extra yardage on this hole at the back. Long enough, you're playing the right teams. Yeah, so there's I mean, this is a pretty confined property. You're never going to reach the length to be, hosting a Canadian amateur. But there's always opportunity to get a few extra yards here and there, and we've taken a chance to do that, and this is a good opportunity on four. You'll see that the fourth tees and the sixth tees are now kind of combined, and we really like to play with this idea of interaction on the golf course, especially at a members club. Anytime you get the chance to, say hello to someone on the tee beside you, it's a really nice experience. So these tees are now together, and they'll create kind of an interactive space on the golf course. Fifth hole, again, not much is changing here. The bones are the same. We've eliminated that right bunker, again, because it's a double penalty. So if you're in that bunker and there was no sand there, would you still be penalized? And in this case, the answer is yes, again, because the trees are there, you don't have a straight shot. So there's not really any purpose to having that bunker there, because you will be penalized if you land there. So that will remain kind of undulating ground, but it will be grass. There's a new set of bunkers between the fifth and the seventh that you'll see there. That really is just a turn point. It's a visual alignment aid. It adds strategy to the hole. The closer you are to that bunker, the better second shot you're going to have. So putting that bunker on the left side of the hole just adds a little bit more strategy to how you get to the green. Just up at the green, again, this was one of Scott's concerns is traffic patterns, and a lot of our data collection was studying where people move on the golf course and where the traffic goes. And this was a very high degree of traffic in this one area. It's a really big pinch point. And what that does, it compacts the ground, makes it really difficult to grow grass, and it makes the conditions of the grass challenging because the ground is so hard. It just doesn't grow grass there. So we've just removed that bunker, allow a little bit more space there for the traffic to move through efficiently, and we'll create a shortcut fall off instead. So instead of being in sand, you'll be in a tight lie that you'll have to skip up onto the green. But bent grass holds up very well compared to bent grass is your fairway, bluegrass is your rough. So the fairway actually holds up to traffic much better than your rough. So we've transitioned it into a fairway cut to deal with the traffic in the wear. My ladies had something to say about this hole. We listened. I'd love you to be able to bump and run a ball into the screen. So we've just widened the approach. We've shifted the bunker a little bit farther out of the way so that you can actually use the contouring, use the land to run a ball up onto the green now. The cart path is shifted to the right side of the hole. So there'll be fairway cut from the 5th green up into the 60s. It'll all be kind of walkable. You won't have to cross a cart path. This is kind of things that I think about is that if a walker doesn't have to cross the cart path to get to the next tee, that's a nicer experience than having to walk across a cart path. So shifting the cart path over to the other side of the hole is preferable, and it gets the visual out of the way as well. So again, just enlarging the tees. The other elements of the hole stay pretty much intact, just allowing different shot options to get to the green. So creating that equity of, yep, sure, you can fly the ball into the green, but you can also hit a hybrid along the ground and reach the green if you pick the right spot. Gonna skip over 7 and 8 or? Yeah, so there was a lot to say about 7 and 8, and there was a lot of comments that we filtered through. You'll see on the next slide, we went forward with option 7A. So the green remains in the same place. There was a lot of concerns about losing the dog leg, concerns with the forward tee location. The silver's back where it's meant to be. Okay, don't come at me. Concerns with the location of moving the 8th tees. There was going to have to be a little bit of tree removal. There was concerns about where the fork in the road was going to come into play. So we've left 7 green and we've left 8 tees where they are. And if you can go to the next slide, Eric, you can see that. But what we are proposing to do is kind of reconfigure the green. So as it plays now, the best angle into the green is from the 5th fairway. It's the most receptive way to get to that green. And we really want to discourage people from doing that because it's obviously a pretty big safety concern for me. So we're really trying to discourage people from going into the 5th fairway by putting in that bunker complex, by adding trees, and by creating a green that's much less receptive from a ball coming from that angle. So it's sloping away from you to a fall off on the right side into kind of a low fairway area. So really kind of just changing the entire strategy of this hole, but the green, the tees, the fairway remain in the same location. On the 8th hole, we went with option C. That was the most popular option in the survey. It allows the green to be pushed on toward the ravine as much as possible. What it also does is allow the fence to be removed. We've saved a space for the red tees behind the green, but far enough back that should no longer be a safety issue there. Again, the 8th tees will stay in the same location because there was a little bit too much complication with changing the routing of the road at this time and taking down those trees. So the 8th tees will stay where they are. Go ahead, Eric. So here's the proposed 8th hole. You're gaining approximately 18 yards here. So all the tee yardages will shift. tees remain in the same place, they're just bigger, there's more team space, more variety, it's easier for Scott to maintain. The bunker is shifted 20 yards beyond, because if we think about that double hazard again, currently, if you're in that bunker, do you have a shot at the green? No. So if we remove it, they'll be low enough. So we've shifted it on, it will act more as an alignment bunker and a carry bunker for people who hit it a little bit farther now, it comes into more play. So a slight reconfiguration of the bunkers on this hole. The idea here is from the tee, you'll see kind of an echelon of bunkers. So they'll kind of be in your face like that. But there's actually lots of fairway to play to. The green is shifted toward the ravine as much as possible. The shape of the green is changed, slight contouring behind the green to protect that red tee. So that red tee will remain a drop zone as well. Fence is removed. And the silver tees are pushed forward into the extended back fairway. Yeah, cart path is moved as well, just because we're pushing the green as far back to the ravine as possible. So the idea with the pushing the green back is bringing in that really incredible natural feature into the hole as part of the hole. So there'll be a look to it, there'll be a feel to it, that the ravine is part of that hole, and really use that feature as much as possible, because it's a really special element to the property that's kind of overlooked until you get to the ninth. I know I'm going quite fast. I would encourage you to look at the booklet if we have some more thoughts on this. There's a lot of context into how the decisions were reached. The ninth hole to me it has such potential to be an incredible golf hole just by shifting some of the aesthetics around the green. I'd love to widen the approach, allow a ball to be hit along the ground and reach the green. There's some maintenance efficiency problems in that low area where all the balls funnel to, so we're going to address that as well. Slight bunker reconfiguration. There's a rendering in the booklet as well of what the school could look like, so please do take a look. Again, widening the fairway as much as possible. You'll see the silver tee in the fairway there. And also slight expansion of this green, if possible, to create a kind of back right in position that you don't have and that you likely did have at one point. Just with time, all of your greens have shrunk. So we'd love to just get you that green size back, and that allows you for more pins, spreads wear better, and it makes for just more variety and interesting pin positions. And finally, the practice area. There's such a great opportunity here to address some of the safety issues. It's really difficult as it is now to have more than one person using the practice area. So our solution to that is to put a green at either end. So you can play both ways. So you can get anywhere up to an 80-yard shot here from green to green. And put in 3 different kind of bunkers that will be reflective of the depth and the yardage that you find on the golf course, so that you can actually practice your shots that you will be experiencing on the golf course, as well as create 2 greens that reflect the style and fall offs and lies recovery shots that you might find on the golf course as well. So there'll be shortcut lies, rough lies, you'll have different elevations, different up down, and a lot of different contouring that you can really explore and practice. And just with the expansion of this practice area, it does become really important to create that barrier between the first hole. So you'll see the additional plantings and contouring at a larger scale here on the first hole. Yeah, so remember your questions if you have them for me. Happy to answer them, and I will pass on to Sean.
I'd like to thank Christine, and she's been very, very patient through this process. As she mentioned, this is draft number 4, and having worked with a number of different architects in my career, I can tell you that they're not all this patient. So thank you, Christine, with accepting feedback and listening to members. So thank you for that. Now for the real exciting part of the presentation this evening is we'll talk about a couple of things, but I'd like to start with, golf course master plan is always a very emotional process. There are strong opinions on either side. We received feedback like, why are we even talking about this? Let's start now to, I don't want to change a thing. We appreciate all of you being respectful through the process, but we'd be remiss if we didn't listen to our member feedback. And first and foremost, we have, in addition to all the data points that Christine mentioned, it's the data from our member surveys. And there's, quite honestly, again, this year, our membership feedback has been very good in almost all departments. And we're always striving to be at least a 4.3 or 5. So that's a standard that we set as an operation. But there's a couple of specific areas that we're failing at. And most notable is the bunkers and greens. And I, by no means, Scott, that's not a slanter or a slant on Scott's ability to grow greens, but our ability to deliver consistent greens. And by doing that, we'll talk about kind of end of life features and the different growing mediums in the shade, and some have none have drainage, some are push-up greens. So he's trying to really manage kind of 9, 10 different greens at once, and it's very difficult. So if we look at our bunkers as well, we know that, and quite honestly, that was the start of this process, was looking at bunkers and then realizing that, gosh, there's so many more opportunities to elevate the member experience and the golf experience here at the Toronto Hunt. Our bunkers on average are ranking at 2.87 out of 5. I think for a club of this magnitude and stature, that we would consider that unacceptable. And the greens are a little bit under 4. Having said that, we've heard many comments to say, well, the greens are fine the way they are. And they can be very good at times, and Scott does an exceptional job with what he has to work with. But if we want consistent, predictable greens, and when I talk about predictable greens, it's how they're going to react to rain and winter and all those things. Eventually, because they are 7, I think, of 10 are beyond expected life, well beyond expected life, and they will fail at some point. It's just a matter of, and not to be threatening, but they become unpredictable. They don't drain properly and handle winter. So they will at some point, we don't know when that is. Like, they could be fine for 10 years, they could be fine for 15, or they could not be fine for 3. So that's the reality of what we have. So next slide, please. So how did we get here from a budget standpoint? Before I do that, so the budget which we're presenting today is based on the current master plan as Christine presented. The current market value and estimated inflationary increases. So we're going to present a couple of different options where we forecasted 1, 2, 4, 5 years out, even as far as that. And once we get beyond, I'm going to say the next year or two, it's really based on inflation, and it's very difficult to be 100% accurate with those figures. The intent of the exercise was to establish an order of magnitude budget. So is it 2 million? Is it 10 million? Is it 5 million? So we'll show you that. But the true value really won't be determined until we go to market and go to tender with final plan and establish the timing. We have used just how we got to the numbers as we basically looked at tender documents from a club actually going to construction next year and the year after. So we've kind of used comparative data. We looked at 3 tender documents for 1 club that's scheduled to go to construction next year. And then I also, from my own experience, based on a major renovation done at Coppenwood in the recent years, I was able to get their tender documents as well. So we kind of looked at the averages and looked at the scope of work and developed the current budget. And we also Scott was instrumental in providing some good costing from our tree consultants and arborists, our bunkers and greens mix as well. So next slide, if you may. So if we look at the draft budget by whole, and I'm not going to go whole by whole by whole, but I'll just speak to it in general terms. So general and admin is the first line item there, and that includes things like mobilization, the actual cost of the bunker sand, the remediation of haul roads, any hauling material off-site, for example. So that comes out at about $500,000, and then from there, the putting green is about 132,000. And then from there, it would range anywhere from, call it 250 to 400 and change per hole. So on average, and you might look at 7 and 8 and go, gosh, hole like number 1 is actually more, and that's not a mistake. It's all really determined on the scope of work, the grassing changes, the tree planting. So it's actually doesn't, the order of magnitude cost for actually moving a green slightly is really not much more than actually building a green in the same location. It's still kind of the same scope of work. There might be a little bit of earth moving beyond that. So in summary, we're, with the 10% contingency here in the 4.5 million, that's the plan costed at kind of from present day to about 2 years out from now. Okay. Next slide is we just broke it down a different way to help you understand the cost of kind of features, so to speak. So the general and admin line item, which I mentioned first, included kind of mobilization, erosion control, transporting fill, haul road disruption, bunker sand, and then pre and post construction T work. And if you're going to go into a greens renovation, you better darn well do the trees, because that would be the biggest foot shot in the whole process if you didn't. If you're now trying to grow bent grass greens in a public growing environment, that would be a fatal mistake. And I think we've heard horror stories about that in recent years at some courses in the GTA who've done green renovations but didn't take the time to actually do the tree work in advance to make sure they had adequate sunlight. The T work is it's broken down by item: removing cart paths, installing new cart paths, resurfacing existing cart paths, removing existing bunkers, installing new bunkers, remodel existing bunkers in place. Greens construction obviously is a big line item. The shaping and remodeling of fairways, the tree work as well. I'll just speak to the tree work for a second, because I think there's maintenance tree work, which we've been doing for years, and Scott, spending, but there's considerable tree work in preparation for example, the greens, for example, or playability of the golf course, which we know we have to do as well. So there's bent grass seed and sod, and there's bluegrass sod, and then there is going to be excess material on site, and there's going to be irrigation work along the way. So again, 4.5 million. So if we could go to the next slide, please. When looking at execution plan options, and we're going to present, and this is a really difficult one, and quite honestly, every time I've gone through this process at clubs, and I've done it kind of 2 times prior to this one, is everybody, your mind immediately goes to, okay, how do we hit the least amount of disruption over a longer period of time? And then when you end up walking through it, everybody usually ends up at the same place. So we're going to take you through a couple of different scenarios which we looked at, and the first one being, call it a 6-month closure. And so the year 1 would be, and we've used just these dates as kind of a placeholder, so to speak, and for budgeting purposes. But if we were to start by doing the practice area next year, and let's say the August 1st to November 15th, the practice area would be closed, the golf course remains the same as is. And there's a method why we've done this, and that's to ensure that when you're doing the golf course, there's actually a place for members to practice. And so we would do that in year 1, and then the holes 1 through 9 in the putting green would be done from August 1st, 2025 to July 31st, 2026. And we use 6 months. What we think is we started out at 5 months, and I want to, let's just make it 6 to make sure that, you know, we don't go beyond that, and it's better to kind of under promise and over deliver. And that was based on the current costs. And the pros to this method are significant upgrades to all golf course playability and features, disruption to play over a shorter period of time, least expensive option of the current draft master plan, and consistency amongst greens, so a shorter transition period. And when I get to the next option, you're doing greens over a longer period of time. So you're going to have greens that are a year old, you're going to have greens that are 2 years old. So if the objective is to have very consistent greens, this is the shortest period of transition. And the cons are disruption to the practice area over 3 months in 2024, disruption to golf course over 6 months in 24 or 25 and 26. Okay. So the second option we looked at is, okay, how do we keep a portion of the golf course open? And again, so this would equate to 2 kind of 5-month partial closures. And the first closure would be year 1. So let's call it 25, August 1st, 25 to June 30th, 26. So you would work through kind of the fall months and early spring and open June the 30th. And we complete holes 1 through 4 in the practice area first. So therefore, during that period, you'd be playing holes 5 through 9, and we would have a putting green to practice on. We would pause for the fall of 26 and the spring of 22nd, just to allow folks to enjoy 18 holes of golf, or 9 holes, sorry. And then we would get started again in August 1st of 27 to June 30th of 28. And so there's 2 closures over a period of, call it 4 years. It cost, as you can imagine, now your mobilization is twice, you're dealing with inflation as you get towards the latter stages, estimated at, and I think we built in about a 6% inflation. It could be higher than that. Again, there would be some risk in this number. The pros, significant upgrades to all golf course playability and features. You would have 5 holes in play at all times. Jeff, that would be very easy to execute. There would be, 5 holes in play. So the cons are obviously disruption to the golf course over 2 5-month periods, disruption to golf. The inflationary increases are at risk. This is a more expensive option, and the consistency amongst greens. So there's going to be a longer transition period because you're going to have greens. When the golf course reopens, you're going to have greens that are brand new. You're going to be playing older greens, and there's a much increased chance for actually getting pulling out back in your new greens because of the seed heads and bringing those forward. So there's also a couple of other options that we looked at, and quite honestly, we didn't feel like there were options. So the first one we looked at is we do a staged approach by feature. So year 1, you could conceivably do green or fairway bunkers, for example. You close. Potentially, yes. There's arguments that could be made whether you close or not while you're doing fairway bunkers, but the second year would be greens, and now if you're going to do greens or greenside, you can't do greenside bunkers without doing greens. If you want to blend the 2 and tie the 2 together, it's like adding an addition onto the roof of your house. It becomes very difficult to do. So year 2, you're likely closed for 6 months. So now you've got the disruption of, a season of bunkers. Now you're going to close to do greenside bunkers. Year 3, you're going to do tees and grassing. Again, that's very difficult to stay open while you're doing it, as with the freeform tees and with the fairway enlargements. There's health and safety issues. There's and year 4, you do the practice facility. So the impact to the member experience is actually over 4 years, and then cost implications could be as much as 1.5x of that $4.5 million. So and then again, health and safety concerns with, now you're on a construction site with heavy equipment running around, and you've got members trying to play, and it becomes very, very, very difficult. We even thought of, okay, and the biggest challenge actually is because we're a 9-hole golf course. if we were an 18-hole golf course, you could conceivably close 9 holes at a time and then move on to the next line. So the challenge is the size of our property when only being 9 holes. Stage approach 3 holes at a time. So year 1, conceivably, you could do a practice facility. Year 2, for example, you could do holes 2, 3, 4, play 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, and the putting green is open. And then, you know, once those holes are ready, you move on to do 5, 6, and 7 into play 2, 3, 4, and you'd have to kind of work with the routing 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 1, and then so on and so on. So again, the impacts to play and member experience over 4+ years, cost implications now are well beyond kind of our inflationary estimate at this point, and then health and safety concerns about now, as you can imagine, you know, if you're working on 2, 3, 4, getting materials and heavy equipment across holes that are being played, and again, it becomes health and safety. There's also the do nothing approach, and we, you know, this is again, you know, from our perspective, it's not an option. We do have aging infrastructure. We do have unpredictable greens. We have bunkers we know that are failing, and significant member concerns, golf course conditioning challenges, increased likelihood of winter kill and pest infestations, greater impacts to plane traffic, and higher operational costs. This is, I found this, the slide, or the portion of the slide on the left is actually from the Golf Course Architects Association. It's right on their website regarding the lifespan, and that nothing does last forever. And we think of buildings in terms of kind of necessary capital spending, and for some reason we don't think of golf course in terms of the same thing, but it is in fact true. Everything has a lifespan, and greens in fact are 15 to 30 years on average. Bunkers, depending on the construction method, I would even extend that to, you know, 10 to 12 years. And they've got a bit of a shorter lifespan here, but irrigation components, parking paths, you know, practice tees, drainage pipes, and then grass. And as you can see, if we were to compare our greens, you know, greens 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, and the putting green are beyond expected life or useful life of our infrastructure. So at some point, you know, we think in terms of construction with respect to, okay, even if we were to say, okay, we're just going to do bunkers and greens, and the reality is, you know, the impact and the cost is actually not far off of probably what we've proposed, just based on the scope of work itself, right? So next slide, please. So 3 questions always when I've done this. One is, you know, how much, when, and how we're going to pay for it. Are always the 3 questions. So I think we've answered the first 2. The second is, you know, how will we pay for this? So, you know, we've got aspirational capital, and we've got kind of necessary, kind of not fun capital, which is the infrastructure things. And so hopefully you've read my memos over the past 2 years, but we've been working on this 30-year capital plan. So we did a capital asset review. So any component or asset over $2,500 on this entire property, we've done the year of acquisition, the useful life, and the replacement cost. So we've been building this model now for a couple of years, and now we have aspirational capital. And I would, by the way, include probably bunkers and greens and necessary capital at some point. But there's aspirational capital, whether it's kind of, you know, redesigning a room in the clubhouse, or, you know, adding a putting green in the basement of the golf center. So that's what I would call aspirational capital. So we've combined those 2 things, and if we look over the next, and everybody's going to gasp for a second, but if we look over the next 30 years, we're forecasting about $35 million in kind of capital spending. Having said that, if you look back at our capital spend the last 30 years, you know, it's probably not far off. We're spending, you know, just a little under $800,000 this year alone. So it's not as, you know, and that's, by the way, that 35 at equipment plants. we just plugged, call it the golf course master plan, and what we think the bluffs erosion is gonna cost in that number as well. So what we're doing from here is, we've built out, and if you go to the next slide, actually, and this is, by the way, still in draft format, so please don't, I'll speak to this, but what we've done is we've taken basically our current cash position. We've looked at operating revenues forecasted for the next 30 years. We've looked at kind of the operating expenses. We've built in a CapEx fee. We've built in entrance fees. And at the end of the day, it'll show us what our kind of capital, what our funding plan will need to look like over the next 30 years. So it's a very kind of proactive approach to capital spending. We're just waiting, and I'm going to say it's probably 95% complete. We're just waiting for the golf course master plan and the bluffs erosion, which are going to come into focus likely in the next month. And we've got to go through the finance committee and board, but we'll have a very detailed and at first glance, we're very fortunate to be in a position of the forethought of previous boards and members with respect to reserves, and our cash position is about $6.2 million at this point. So we're very fortunate, and at first glance, it actually doesn't. It's not as bad as you think. So we're very. So that'll be finalized in the coming months here as well. And so next steps, we are going to kind of put the finishing touches on the draft master plan, but we do need to finalize the budget and determine the execution plan or proposed execution plan for the members to review. We're then going to finalize the third-year capital plan and funding model, and then the membership socialization will come this winter, and then ultimate membership approval. So at some point, we have to go to the membership and with the final plan, with the the final draft budget with respect to the funding model, and that will come. So we're not quite at that point yet, but we're getting very close to that. So thank you.
Okay, that was a lot to take in, and obviously the small type doesn't help. There will be opportunity to dive a little bit deeper into those, but just understand that this has been a journey and a process. I'd like to say that in 2000, McBroom did his master plan, and the membership has benefited from that ever since. There's been a few disruptions with the addition of Pond and a few changes to hole number 1, but relatively speaking, we've gone that lifespan on a lot of those elements of this club. So now it is looking forward. We want to hear questions, and as I said, we are looking for a question, and we're looking to direct it to somebody. I will point to the person, and if you require a mic, I'll bring it to you. So Andy had his hand up first.
Naturally. The one question I have is, number 8, removing the fence, but the red T is still there. Isn't that a hazard?
It should.
Like, what's going to stop balls from flying onto that T?
Yeah, so the T has shifted. There's no scale on here, but the T is approximately 12 to 14 yards beyond the green. So there's enough space there where some contouring and rough grass will intercept any balls that are running along the ground between those areas. There's mounding behind the green that will also intercept balls. I don't imagine a lot of interaction between that green and T. That's you can't 100% guarantee that, of course, but I think we've done everything that we can in this plan with contouring, grass types, and location of that T to mitigate that. If necessary, there will be a place where people waiting for their playing partners to play off of the back tees, to wait in a really safe space. The goal here was to remove that fence, and I think we can do that in a safe way with that location.
I just wonder, because I use that drop area a lot.
Looking out for yourself, I understand. But it's definitely of concern, yes.
Okay, Larry, I saw you were second.
I don't need my problem. I have three questions. Firstly, the budget costs for the bluff erosion, because I know that we're gonna be responsible for that. The second question I have is, according to most of everybody I've spoken to, we have an outdated kitchen that also needs to be either renovated, repaired, or overhauled to meet the demands of the number of weddings and the functions that we want to have in the club. And the third question I have is, when the course is being closed for 6 months, are we calculating into are the members going to, well, here's the question, are the members going to be charged annual dues for that period where they're not allowed to play the course? And if they're not, that's really part of the cost of the project.
So first question, very good ones, by the way, the erosion, yeah, so that is, so we're in the design phase with the remediation of the bluffs as we speak, and from there, so we actually have the design drawings. We're actually going to DFO, TRCA, and M&R with the permit drawings very shortly, and those drawings will be costed. You know, rough estimates at this point only, we haven't even priced those drawings, so I wouldn't be giving a very educated. I can tell you it's likely between 4 and 5, and that's what I think at first glance. So definitely more to come on that. The second is our 30-year capital.
4 and 5 what?
No,
4 and 5 million. Sorry. The good news is it's not a billion. I'm just kidding. But the kitchen itself is, so we've built in a replacement value of upgrading the kitchen along the way as well. I think with, so that is part of our 30-year costing. And your third question, sorry, was
Membership fees.
oh, membership fee. So ultimately that is going to be a board decision, and Bill's, you know, whether I cannot make that decision sitting here tonight, but that will be an eventual board decision as to what the fees look like during those years. A lot, you know, may even depend on when that is.
go ahead.
Comment, a couple questions. First of all, the comment to Christine and to Christine and the committee, I think you've done an exemplary job of listening to the membership and adjusting the final draft coming back with all the comments that we've received. Because I think that is very responsive to what I was hearing throughout, and I think you've done a great job, so congratulations. Couple things that weren't mentioned. John mentioned tree pruning around the greens so that we've got enough sunlight, so the new greens are going to develop properly. I didn't see anything specifically mentioned in the plans about pruning trees down the fairways. And for instance, if I look at 7 or 8, and you look at the right-hand side, some of the trees are now past the rough and 20 yards onto the fairway. So your tendency is to play to avoid the trees. But if we prune the tree, you can play more down the fairway, and you would also have a better visibility of the green, so it would be safer. So the first question is, have we considered tree pruning in the fairways in this cost?
So can I pause your second question, Scott, if you'd like to?
Yeah, 100%. The trees have always been on the radar since I've been here, and you get for those on. Oh yeah. How you doing? So I've got an X amount of dollar figure every year in my budget for tree maintenance, and we've done that strategically throughout the property, focusing on dead dangerous trees first, widowmakers, stuff like that. And then we have done the trees that are intruding on the fairways, like about 4 years ago, I did the trees on the right side of one. Canopy, if you remember, was protruding right almost in the center of the fairway. We brought those back. On three, we've done it twice. On the right-hand side, we can only bring it back so much because you gotta protect the homes. We've also brought it back on the left-hand side. But having said that, it's been a few years, so they're growing back into the areas we don't want, so we will be addressing that again this winter as always, but because it's top of mind and there's more interest, I'll be going to the board for a little more dough, so we can do some more pruning.
Scott, can I say that for a second? And to add to that, we initially in the plan, we had kind of hexed out green areas where we knew that trees, you know, the right side of seven's a great example, and we had this hexed out area. Members perceived that as we're gonna remove all those trees. So there was tremendous amount of pushback. So anywhere where there was kind of trimming, we've actually removed that from the plan. To Scott's point, we made a concerted effort to actually add more money in the budget this year for in addition to safety concerns, because there's significant playability concerns out there. In addition to that, I mean, we still have to go through the budget process, but we've made a concerted effort for that this year as well.
Question two.
Within the presentation, I certainly couldn't read your spreadsheets from back here, Sean. So how have we included new irrigation systems throughout as we do the renovations as required?
Yeah, that's so two parts to that. One is there's modifications to the irrigation system because of the renovation. And the second part to that is throughout the 30-year capital plan, we've, you know, end of life, you know, sprinkler heads, control systems, that's built into the 30-year plan as well.
Okay. And the last question, I didn't hear it definitively. You said we're gonna be 4.8 million to do this. We've got 6.5 in reserve. Could you definitively state there will be no capital assessment to the membership to complete the government?
That's a good question. That's ultimately once the funding model, and I'm not trying to do the question, by the way. Once the funding model is complete, I think the board will have a better understanding of, okay, what does our cash flow look like for the next 30 years, and that'll be a decision that they will make.
David Feller.
Very specific thing. Earlier you did some calculations of the number of walkable acres we have, and then use that as a justification for making all the fairways much wider. But can you repeat that justification? Like, for me, I want it easier. And I heard you say at least 5 times. I'm counting here. 5 times to make the fairways wider because of some acreage calculation you've done.
Yeah, so it's a recommendation by the USGA in collaboration with the Superintendent's Association of America. They have a recommendation for a certain amount of fairway that an 18-hole golf course should have to spread wear, be playable, and suit the needs of the golfers. So there's the specific kind of average amount of fairway that golf courses have. If you have less than that, you're traditionally a championship golf course. If you have more than that, you're more of a linksy golf course. But there's a sort of an average amount of fairway that they recommend. And because it's in collaboration with the Superintendent's Association, a lot of it is about conditioning. So turf conditioning and spreading wear and growing good grass conditions. And that number is 16 acres of fairway for 9 holes. Sorry, hectares. And what you have here is 7.8. So you have a lot of opportunity to expand the fairways if we deem desirable. So there's opportunity to expand fairways.
So
I'm not gonna argue with everybody, but I gotta tell you, widening the fairways makes the golf course easier. Okay, John. So I just say, like I started out, I heard a whole front end conversation. We talked about, we're not making it easier. We're making it hard. We're making it adjusting for the top guy, adjusting for the bottom guy. And then every single conversation was about widening the fairways because of a report by a august body, I'm sure. That's the kind of thing for me that I go, I lived in the world long enough to know that you widen all the fairways, the course gets easier.
Stephen, I just want you to have a look. The tree lines and the fairway on Fourth have remained the same. Where Christine is gaining some of that fairway is in the continuous tee box leading up to the fairway through the front. You'll see that the line really hasn't shifted much in the fairway. So don't jump to the fact that we're widening our fairways by 15 yards, 20 yards. You're really not. There's a little bit in here. This trap now becomes short grass, bent grass because it holds up better. It's mounded, it's contoured. We're gaining at little bits and pieces here and there, but that fair, like number 4, that rough line is still where it is. We're not talking about adding extra width. We're gaining it in other spaces. Yes.
Just out of curiosity, could we implement the entire plan on the projected budget if we simply shut down for one season?
It would be if you decided, okay, in 2025, we're gonna shut down for a season, it would be the 4.5.
Like, you get all the work done.
In one season, yes.
Sorry, I have 2 quick questions. One is, one of the complaints is always being that the traps are hard to get into and out of. Does that change with this new plan? There's no comment about that.
Yeah, the bunkers are really redesigned in a lot of different ways. One of the concerns is like physically getting in and out of the bunkers. That we heard a lot of feedback on that. So there's elements of the plan to create gentler walk-ins, create less capes and bays so that you can actually swing a club and stand at your ball. So there's definitely some reconfiguration of bunker shapes and forms to address those issues. Exactly.
Thank you. Second question. I don't know any project that's ever finished on time. What's your experience, Christine, and Sean, your experience with plans and Scott? In terms of the proposed plan, being able to reopen at the middle of the summer versus being shut for a year and a half because we don't get it done by then.
I'll speak this, schedule is, in fact, it can be determined by weather. The one positive, and Scott, you can, add on to this if you want, about the Toronto Hunt is our site is very sandy. And if we were, I'd say there's greater risk in construction projects that have a heavier subsoil, but we've got a tremendous amount of sand, so I'm pretty confident that weather, won't be a significant impact. It's really, 6 months to do 9 holes is, we built Scotland Wood, for example, in basically a year. So 18 holes in a 14-acre practice facility plus 3 practice holes. And by the way, we're on budget.
Sample budget.
But listen, I think the devil's in the details, and the more prepared you are, and with construction drawings, and I know architects, there's some architects who don't even do construction drawings. They're getting contractors to basically bid on concepts, not drawings. I think that's, Christina and I talked about, when and if this thing gets approved, what are the next steps from a construction drawing, bill of quantities and details. So it's like any contracting job, the more information you have, the more accurate you can be with budgeting.
Scott, do you want to?
Oh, I just want to say, most recently, since I've been here, we did a irrigation renovation entire for 750,000, and that's exactly what it came in at, so.
It's the timing I'm more interested in.
Oh, the timing? Well, I'd be lying if I said, it's not a factory, we're up against Mother Nature, but I can guarantee you 99.9%, it's my ability will get it done, so.
Hi, this is for Christine. There's a lot of thoughtful things that have gone into what you've done with the bunkering, you know, I've never liked bunkers that are underneath trees because I know that it's just a problem from a maintenance point of view. And the one on 2 makes a lot of sense, with the mounding and stuff like that. The one on 5, getting rid of the bunker just before the hill, I think I would think that requires some further thought, because without bunkering, even if it's on grass, even if it's in the rough, that's a very easy 100-yard punch into optimum position for coming into the green. I think you make that hole easier.
The green side bunker?
On the right hand side there, I think getting rid of that makes the golf course easier. Because it's much easier to just hit a punch shot there than for a lot of people to hit a bunker shot far enough that then they've got a shot in the green. Another, like, I didn't like the idea of moving 7. I like what you were talking about doing with trees on 7. You know, it's just become a part of the game. The guys are just blasting the ball out there. I see very few guys making pars still from up there, other than, you know, some of our very best players. To be honest with you, I see a lot of chunks and a lot of shots coming up short because it's blind. Number 8, where you've got a bunker sort of, I know you got 3 of them.
Yeah.
The furthest one on the left,
Yeah.
we used to have a bunker there.
Yeah,
And it was a problem because it's such a wooded area there,
right,
and stuff falling into a sand bunker there.
yes.
And so we've already been there. We had that. I've been here for 3 renovations and a new clubhouse. We had that several ago and we got rid of that.
Yeah.
And I'm also concerned about anything moving 8 green further to the left, because I think that tee shots from 9 come over in that area frequently. Big high hook over the woods with mid and higher handicap
Yeah.
players. Any more traffic you got down the fairway there, you're gonna have more congestion, and I know safety is an issue for you. That's an issue.
Yeah, definitely. That area is so congested. It's really difficult to design movement in that space. Yeah.
So I
I-
wouldn't make it any worse.
The membership and the surveys pointed out a willingness and a want to bring the ravine into play. And that's where we listen from that. So 100% mishits are always gonna be a problem. It's the ones that are on purpose that, like Mr. Donato now aiming for the drop zone. We have a online question. Okay, so there's 2 questions and they relate to the same thing. It is, if there's closures from August till the following August, where could members play? Have we looked at reciprocals and other questions? So that is Mr. Long.
Okay, thank you very much. That was certainly one that we expected very early in the proceedings, so the answer is we will do our very best with my contacts, Scott's contacts, my associates' contacts as well, to go out into the industry, ask for as many favors as we can possibly get, knowing that we are in a very busy period of golf at every other club as well. So I had a question months ago, would we be able to get 3 tee times a day at Toronto Golf? Well, no, we will not. We will try to get as many as we possibly can, knowing full well that once we reopen, we will have to pay back those favors. So it's a give and take relationship. We want as many rounds for our members as possible. However, the climate right now is fairly difficult to just go out and demand tee times for a project that we would be doing on our own. I've used the analogy a few years ago, there was a golf course that had severe flooding. When something like that happens, it's a little bit easier for everyone to reach out and say, we're willing to help. When a club decides to do something like this on their own, it's less likely. So we don't want anyone to expect that if we're closed for the 3 months of each year, that you'll be able to play 75 rounds at other high-end private clubs. We will absolutely do our best, but I can't give you a definitive answer on what that looks like.
You set some kind of expectation, like.
Not 3 times a day at Toronto. Ultimately, until we know what the timing is, it's very difficult to project that far in advance. If the industry has a bit of a downturn, as we expect it may, it might be a little bit easier than red hot golf right now. So, you know, if it's in a couple of years, maybe there's a chance it was a little bit more than if it was happening this year or last year.
I have, yeah, and a question.
This is for Christine. One, those presentations are small to see, and I imagine they will shortly be online. Can you indulge me and explain exactly what the lines mean? Where there's evidence, I saw in the frequently asked questions that there's approximately 80-some trees being moved. Where on those plans it shows that trees are being planted and being removed? Just so when I go back and look at this later, I can understand what it is that you're actually showing. on the
Yes,
plan.
definitely.
So the question is, on the plan, it's hard to see where are thoughts of removing trees. Because the first master plan we had showed removal of trees combined with the trimming. And so this latest master plan, based on a lot of comments that we gathered throughout the process, we've actually reduced the number of trees that would need to be cut down to only the essential ones that may affect greens growth. The trimming is another whole plan that Scott and his team are working on. And you will see on this plan, there are a number of trees being planted, far and above what we're removing.
What are the white lines?
So those are mounding contour lines. It is no longer just a flat. If we were removing a sand trap in that space there, that is being replaced with mounding. And in this particular case, it's in a bent grass. There's also mounding that happens in roughs.
Can I just elaborate on it? Can I also have a point? So just to elaborate on that, if, again, it will be detailed in a booklet, there'll be a legend, you can take your time with this, there are a lot more context, I apologize for the briefness of this presentation. Sean put me on a tight timeline here, but so these lines here are the edge of the fairway. You see that over here, edge of the fairway, these thicker white lines, edge of the fairway. These are the tees, edge of the tees. The white lines that Eric was referring to are down here. These are the contouring lines, so that'll be slopes up and down. So just anything that indicates it's not flat ground. The lines here on this green in particular are fall offs. So that'll give you an indication of where the green falls off into shorter cut. Please do look at the booklet. I'm sorry, this is small. I hear you, I understand. I will give you all the context and all the definitions in the booklet very, very soon.
Two questions. Clarification for number 9. You show 2 red tees. I just want to confirm that the red tee is where we talked about behind. So when you go to number 9, you show one over the ravine. 9.
Yeah, I'm trying, sorry.
No, that's 8.
I'm trying.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
okay.
trying to, I don't know where to put it. Okay,
So there's 2 red tees shown.
yeah, so the main red tee will be here. This is the main tee. There was an option here when we were talking about moving the red tee up into the fairway. There was complaints that they didn't want that short yardage. So there was an option to go back, but the yardage on the whole will remain essentially unchanged. Apart from the red tee moving from here back a little bit.
So you mentioned you were removing the fence.
Yes.
I'm not as worried about balls coming into the red tee. I'm worried about red tee balls going over, which would be
Right.
fine.
Yeah.
I cut the corner.
Yeah, that
there.
angle is really tight.
So what's the thought on that? Because I feel that's intimidating for.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I hear that. Again, this is just like, it's such a tight area of the golf course. It's difficult for me to get the feedback of we want to remove the red tee, or we want to keep the red tee there, but we want to remove the fence. So it's a really difficult balancing act to find. I hear you. There's an option to maybe put in a fence that's a little bit more aesthetically appeasing, remove the chain link. There's still space here to work on. I don't think this is the safest solution, if I'm being honest, but it's a solution that the membership wants. So that's my job as the architect to step in and say, okay, this is still a safety issue, so I hear you. It's front of mind and safety is really important to me, and so I wanna make sure that this space is safe going both ways.
Okay, well, yeah, if it could be considered. My second question is for Sean on the numbers. One of the reasons we're doing this is to maintain the greens, reduce the cost. Is the cost reduction of the sand and greens built into the budget?
Is it built into the construction budget or a long-term operational?
The
No,
operational budget.
we're not, and the reality is, we're not saying, I don't think one of us had said we're gonna save money. That would not be the intent, it would be the reallocation of labor. So for example, if Scott is, you know, spending less time on bunkers every day, it could be more time that he's spending on manicuring the golf course.
Yeah, maybe not, that's not the way I'm looking at it. If we do nothing, the cost will increase. So technically, over 30 years, our operational costs would increase doing nothing and building this. So there's an offset between doing nothing and building.
Yeah, challenging to kind of quantify, and I wouldn't give a big number, I think would be, you know, it'd be pretty aspirational. But again, it's a reallocation of resources and budget as well to perhaps providing an overall better experience for members and, you know, more focus on divots and things that would lead to a better member experience as well.
Also say that,
No, the fact is, with doing nothing over 30 years cannot be an option based on what the professional developments. So things have to happen at some point. It's when and how much and how far. I promised Mr. Fox.
I got a couple of questions on the safety. Number 7 safety was a big issue there, and I have a problem with it this year. But as I understand it, you're not going to move the green on 7, but you're going to just reconfigure it. So I take it that safety issue still exists. When you're on the right side, you can't see the green. And the other one is the tee box on number 3, the proximity to the green on number 2, an issue because there's already only about 5 or 10 paces
Yes,
from the green there.
totally agree.
And
Yes.
so did you, maybe I missed it. Did you do anything on
I
that?
didn't speak on it today, but if you have time to look in more detail, you'll see the green is actually shifted a little left as well. The center line has changed.
Okay.
There's more space in between the green and the tee. We've also added a sort of an interceptor bunker for balls that are running toward the third tees. So we've definitely addressed that space. We've added some contouring as well to increase that safety margin. And in regards to the 7th, that what ideally we would have a visual from the tees all the way to the green along that right side. And that's part of. Pardon?
You will,
Try.
Ideally, yes.
ideally.
If we can get those trees trimmed up on the right side of 7, that'll be part of the tree plan, which is, the tree plan is separate to this plan. That's why you're not seeing tree removals. You'll see tree plantings, but the removal and the trimming will be a separate plan from this. Which will be developed with Scott and.
One thought is on 7. One other thought with the way that the tees are now realigned on the 7th tee, we've eliminated the far right view that you would have that really blocks out the green. So by shifting everything slightly to the left or in more of an alignment with where the black tees and the red and silver are, it does create a little bit more of an ease to seeing the green. So, and I think with some tree trimming along the right-hand side as well is going to open up more of a view there as well.
And just quickly, on 9, did you say you were gonna get rid of that gully or minimize that?
Soften it.
Soften it, or so you'll raise it, or?
It'll be a cut fill balance of material that's there. We don't want to change the drainage patterns.
We don't want to change the drainage patterns in that space, but we will essentially make more flat space in there by cut fill, so filling it a little bit. So that we can spread the wear and spread the divots. Yeah,
Garth?
Just a question about number one. Can you just walk me through your thinking on keeping the tree in the fairway on number one?
yeah. If it were up to me, that tree would be gone yesterday.
As long as we got that on recording.
Yes, it's on record now. I think that tree penalizes the higher handicaps and the slower swing speeds, essentially the people that it shouldn't penalize, because the big hitters don't even look at that tree, they just bomb it right over top. It's a maintenance nightmare, it's literally right in the middle of the fairway, it drops acorns, you have to pick up those acorns before you can cut the fairway, so it just, there's a lot of maintenance efficiencies that it costs you money. I don't think it's good design, so if it were up to me, I would have a tree removal graphic on that. It does look great, it's beautiful, I agree. Yeah.
You had a question.
I do. Yeah, there's the same thing, there were a couple of people before, but I'll ask.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Question relates to the 30-year plan, the financials, on that. How widely is that document can be shared? Just out of curiosity in terms of managing the priorities, because we have some other competing capital priorities, and how do things fit in, and I guess making a decision on this master plan sort of has a couple of plugins. And then the second part is maybe a follow-up on the savings that one of the other members asked about before. I think there's some in some of the preamble, you know, we're trying to save expense because we have high maintenance costs because we've got old stuff. So we need to spend capital to save on expense. And so when you're managing your cash, there's always this exchange between cash flow, or sorry, between expense and capital. Can you help me understand how, on the one hand, you're saying, okay, well, we need to do this to save expense, but then the expense doesn't actually get saved in the end. You're actually putting out more cash in here.
Yeah, so good questions. One is, we'll start with the 30-year capital plan. That will be socialized to the membership. I'm sure we're not going to go into detail of when assets are going to be replaced and how much, but as far as that cash flow for the next 30 years, that's going to be a large part of our planning. So that I'm assuming, you know, once that's final, it's going to be part of not only the master plan presentation, but likely capital spending in years to come as well. The second is with respect to saving, and I want to be very clear with the phrase because I think it's important that I don't think anybody's saying we're going to save on maintenance expenses for the next, but we're going to reduce the likelihood of escalating maintenance costs because of aging infrastructure. So perhaps that's a better way to phrase it.
Hi, thanks so much for all of the thanks so much for all of the committee, as everyone else has said. Christine has done a fabulous job. Definitely in your thoughts and presentation. I just want what's the kind of the vote present or execution mechanism kind of going forward? Is it going to be kind of an all or nothing, or is it you know? I'm just wondering how that's actually going to go through.
Yeah, so
giving us the opportunity to have a town hall to get more information, because there's been a lot of Q&A over the summer since the first resolution.
Yeah, and we haven't, to answer your question with respect to the board, we've had preliminary discussions that the membership will approve the plan. So we will come forward with a plan. We'll be asking for membership approval. The plan will also include the execution along with the budget as well. And that will be forthcoming. We still have to, you know, after this meeting, we're going to meet as a committee next week to define, okay, are we confident with this plan and membership support of this plan? And then we have to, once the costs are finalized, you know, finalize a 30-year capital plan, we have to go to finance committee and board. So there likely will be a little bit of a gap before we come back to the membership with kind of the, you know, the final plan there will be a presentation of the final plan. There will be the cost, there will be the 30-year capital plan as well going forward for approval for the membership. So the membership, I would suggest, will either approve or disapprove of that plan. And having said that, we still have to have those discussions at the board level as we finalize that.
I'd just like to add that we need to look at, the fact that we have a master plan, and this is the direction the golf course is taking. And then we have executional plans and options, and that is a separate item. So we will be looking for approval of direction to help guide Scott and his team moving forward. Because right now, we don't have anything, and we need to have a plan. There's no way around that. How we execute it as a club is another question that we'll be bringing to the membership. Okay. Yes,
I have a concern about, hole number 8 and the removal of, the fence. And I'm just wondering whether you consider some sort of a barrier, even though not as high as it is, but something perhaps 6 feet or 5, whatnot, to prevent balls from rolling into the teeing area. Also, I think we're gonna have an issue with goals trickling down and then the playability and of these tees, people playing off the red tees, guys wanting to chip onto the green. How are you gonna, that's a Jeff problem. You're gonna have to have a local rule.
About like barrier to protect the people sitting.
Yeah, we have discussed a barrier to protect people who are waiting at the tee, waiting to hit, sitting there. So that's still on the table. There's definitely, I think there needs to be more thought in this space. There might end up being a barrier. However, removal of the fence is still on the table. That's the main goal. So to get rid of that fence and still create a safe environment.
I
So,
think we're trying to get rid of the batting cage field.
yeah, Yeah.
And
Yeah, I was just wondering, what is approval, membership approval? Is it 51%? Is it 2/3? I probably should know if I read the bylaws, but what is approval?
We haven't. So we haven't gotten that granular, so a majority vote based on our bylaw would approve the plan. Having said that, I think there's consideration of doing better than that as far as making sure we have,
Right? Like golfers, not play.
voting members, yes. And,
All voting.
yeah, all voting.
Does that include social members?
That, again, that's something that would have to be discussed.
Because
Voting members do have a vote. Or sorry, social members do have a vote.
Mr. Russell.
We've talked about the fence with respect to the people heading from 8 on to 9, but I have witnessed many a shot from the Reds on 9 that have hit the fence. So
Yeah.
there is danger going the other way.
yeah, that was brought up earlier, and if you go back to one of the previous drafts, you'll see that the red tee, all of the tees in this area, all of the tees in this area were removed entirely, because in my opinion, it's a very dangerous space to be waiting and standing and hitting from. So all of the tees in this area were removed. The red tee was bumped up into the fairway here. And that solution just wasn't acceptable to the people who played the red tees. So the red tees were then put back. So again, I mean, I feel like I don't know. I don't know what to say.
It is what it is. Can I ask a clarifying question on that?
Sure.
Does PRC allow you to mess with the bank on there?
No, there will be a setback that we have to adhere to, yeah.
Jeff Armstrong.
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, a lot of discussion on the tee box and the K pad. I like the idea of pushing the green back more to the greens. Everything's I think has a trade off. So I think
you have to weigh that versus you design it. I don't think you should let people would love to have both, but you can't have both. It's too big, it's too big for that.
Yes,
I get the sense you.
I do.
So the other point I have is that I heard a lot about tree removals and, I thought it's probably a concern. Because the Toronto is very well known for those trees, old growth oak. Don't mix tomatoes in the city of Toronto, preach the fact we've got to move some trees to, you know, make the breeze more playable, get light air, et cetera. I think it would help the membership if you identify, mark the trees, contemplate removing. Very difficult to see on a drawing. I think walking the course, saying, mark them and say, these are ones we're contemplating removing. I think the membership should have a weigh in on that. It's a big issue, I think. I think we should see what trees are contemplating. Rather than on a plan like this. I can't have to do that. I would walk the course and see for myself.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not, like we can do that, but, I don't know how to word it. We can't, grass doesn't grow in the forest other than the grass I put on 7. But, the idea that we're going with bent grass greens is so that we don't. About 5 or 6 years ago, we had the ice storm and we lost the greens, so the undesirable grass is annual bluegrass, which a lot of people know. And it grows well in shade and under trees, so. We need the maximum sunlight to ensure success of bent grass greens, so. I won't stand here and say that the tree stays and I put bent grass, because then I'll just be fired the next day, so. It's gotta be a fine line between the trees and the greens.
Well, my only ask is, can you listen, Mark, so we can walk the course and say, oh, we just take one down, that big one down. I think as a membership, you should be part of the scene. I respect your opinion, Scott.
Yeah.
What you wanna do, and I'm not saying you got it. I'd like to know what you're taking.
So Jeff,
I don't see what the problem that would be.
Yeah.
there's no problem,
No
but
problem.
just be mindful.
But I'm sensing there is.
No, be mindful of the fact that you can't grow bent grass that's required.
Yes, nobody's saying, not what I'm saying.
I understand that, but you also said, I think the membership needs to know which ones we're moving. If that 100%, but if that becomes your decision-making process because one tree is being removed on 8 that is interfering with growing grass on the green, that's an uneducated decision, and I'm gonna say that out loud.
And that's,
Okay,
and we're outside of our opinion.
yeah, I rely on what the professionals are telling us on how to grow grass.
I don't.
Michael,
Well, I appreciate the, making the distinction between the meeting of.
Can you speak up?
I said, I appreciate, distinguishing between having a master plan and needing one, which I think everybody, most people would wholeheartedly agree with. And then the implementation and timing of that plan. And, you know, having, done a bunch of, large scale projects, both personally and professionally, I think many in here have probably done the thing called feature creep, you know, where you start off with one intention and then everything becomes, urgent and everything has to be done, to the best of your ability as soon as possible. And you said, Sean, that this started with looking at the greens, which were, the bunkers which were failing, and that we needed to address that. And I don't think anybody, I wouldn't disagree with you there. But then we went to a survey, and the survey, based on the survey, is what drove the need for new greens. And there's a distinction between what people say they want in a survey and what our professionals tell us we need. So what started off as a functional requirement, which is to fix the bunkers, has now turned into a survey or, what the common desires of all the members want, which aren't necessarily the same things in terms of what should drive our priorities. So if we had a master plan and we've all agreed on, eventually we need to get to this, what would the timing be based on our experts trying to implement this? Would it be the same as based on the survey? So I guess what I'm asking is, what's the process that we would use? We agree on the master plan, which would be one step. What's the process we use to determine the timing of that and the priorities?
so there was a comment about scope creep, and then there's the question about time.
Yes.
Okay.
Would we have that report card that they did a few years ago that's on the slide there, the greens? I just wanted to touch on that first. It's basically just, I did a report card, green report card when I started here on the age and makeup of the greens. Also, I just want to say, okay, there we go. So when I started here, also, there was only 19,000 rounds. It wasn't as busy, and today, at the end of this year, we're close to 31,000 rounds. So, and plays increased 50% roughly. The tees are undersized for the amount of rounds we get. So when we're looking at bunkers, we're looking at everything. So the tees are undersized. The greens, I've got like 9 different babies there. You can see the different makeups. The years are built, different grass types, different soil mediums. So it's virtually impossible to get them all consistent. So that's what we're looking at, is everything as a whole. And to answer your question, we're not saying do it all today. We're trying to get a plan in place for the future that everything is done. And doing nothing is not an option. We have to do something.
I agree with you, but my ask is not the justification of any of it, my ask is, you know, if we agreed on the master plan, you know, what would you as head of our operations recommend in terms of the timing of the implementation, in terms of what must be done now, and could we be doing, you know, all the greens and bunkers, or could we be doing the bunkers now, or could we wait 3-4 years to do the, you know, the greens and the fairways, or in your opinion, should it all be done now? That's all.
Yeah, there's always options. We touched on a few of the options, and we all felt that, you know, the least obtrusive to all of you is ripping the Band-Aid off in a shorter period of time and getting it all done.
Joseph?
I think it's really interesting that it's almost come full circle, because I'm pleased to hear you talk about master plan. And ultimately what we're talking about is the legacy of the Toronto Hunt Club. And that's going to revolve around what happens here with getting the golf course the way it will be, and people will look back 25 or 30 years from now. Because the course is at its end of life on the greens and on the bunkers. And you go out there and we complain, but you hear the part about ripping off the Band-Aid, and ultimately you start to drag it out, and you're affecting what the legacy will be, because you'll be playing in a construction zone for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I understand that we're all, especially in this day and age, we're all selfish, and that's all about how it impacts us today. But I think that more time should be spent in focusing on this as part of the master plan. And I don't think that's been happening, and we've had some discussion about that, and that was being lost. And I think it's important that that gets put front and center, that there's the master plan, and this is part of that. You take this away, you've still got a master plan to deal with, and there's elements of this that are really critical. And I think that should really be hammered to make sure people understand.
Just to that point, Mr. McCluskey, I think the common theme that I've had in my mind the last several months is there's opportunity versus obligation. And I think if we act, doesn't have to be today, obviously, but if we act sooner than later, we have the opportunity to create something very special, whether it's in the full scope. If we wait, then we will have an obligation to fix everything that has now reached its end of its life. So to me, if you want to maintain the status of #1 animal club in Canada, I think you should, you deserve that. There are things that you can do to accelerate that path, or we hold on and then ultimately, at some point, we do have to close anyway to fix all the failing elements. So opportunity versus obligation.
So there's a saying that goes, a wise man will plant a tree, the shade of which never gets to enjoy. Meaning that we, as members, have enjoyed the shade of the trees that members of the past have planted. And I think we owe it to generations in the future to do the same. Could be us, could be our kids, could be our grandkids. But I think to this point,
we need to do something to make sure that the course maintains that number one status. I think
I think, last question, maybe, and this is a good one.
Speaking of trees, there are a lot of old trees on the forest. Does this plan have anything to manage that process? Speaking of 50 years from now. I just see trees coming down or trees being trimmed. I don't see that many trees being planted.
Well, you don't see a little tree farm every day when you drive in the parking lot?
Well, that's fine.
Still on the property. Well, every time we take a tree down, the city makes us plant 3 to 5 trees, so we're regulated pretty strongly with that.
I don't see any planning out along the fairway.
Well, there is, Christine's got quite a few, in the booklet of new plantings. There's a separate, description for them.
It's got that tree farm, you're gonna be moving those trees, correct?
Correct, well, yes, because they can't stay there.
They'll go out along the
Over correct.
I just have a clarification online, and that is. This person has said that in option 1, the course is closed for 12 months. That is not what was being said. It's 6 months of closure, 3 months in 25, 3 months in 26. There is a 3-month closure of the practice area planned in 2024 in order to allow members to still practice outside, use the bays, use the indoor putting green. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add to that. Okay.
That's accurate.
Okay. I'm gonna do a quick spin. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Really appreciate everything that you do.
Yes.
I think we're done. Eric. Okay. You haven't seen before.
Yeah. Hang on, I wanna talk.